Hey friends, it's Chops. Welcome to another Chops vlog, and let's face it, I'm just never going to rename it, so that's what we're going with, Chops vlog. Whatever. Anyways, I had a completely different video plan for you guys than what we're going to do today. Initially, I had wanted to do a video about getting the discombobulator ray recipe and making some discombobulator rays. It's, I think, my favorite item in the game. It's goofy, it's funny, it's silly, and it's incredibly useful. It forces a dismount in PvP, which is awesome. But also, it turns your opponent into a leper gnome, which is hilarious. So anyways, I was going to do that. As one might imagine, the recipe is proving stubborn. You have to get a security card from Nomergon and then use that security card to learn the recipe from a machine. And that security card has like a 1% chance to drop from a handful of different mobs in Nomergon. So it's taking longer than I thought it would. I didn't want to not put out a video though, so what we're going to do instead is I'm going to fly around and pick up a lot of the outstanding cooking recipes that I have left from vanilla cooking, because another one of my goals is to learn every possible cooking recipe that I can. And as I fly around and get those recipes from various vendors, I think a few are short quests, I think a couple are profession trainers. As I fly around and get those, I'm going to ramble a little bit about where I think the state of free-to-play twinking is. And I think it's a good thing to do. So I think that now is a good opportunity to really look at and talk about what the state of free-to-play twinking on the whole looks like, both sort of as a PvP bracket, but also as it's sort of, as Old Spike put it, you know, it's free-to-plays play their own end game. So what is the end game of sort of the total of free-to-play twinking look like now? Everything's settling down after the expansion launch. We know sort of the gearing meta is solidifying. We're looking at seeing the limits of what free-to-play is capable of. So we sort of know the edges are coming into focus a bit. That was a big thing when the expansion first launched and just everything changed, as we lost sight of the edges, and it made things very hard to pin down, and nobody really, it was almost like playing a brand new game. It was very weird and sort of disorienting for a while, but I think we're in a very good place now where we can sort of take a more holistic look at free-to-play twinking and make some definitive statements about where we think it is. And so that's what I'm going to do while we get these cooking recipes. Yeah. So the first thing I want to do is, if you're new to World of Warcraft, or you're new to free-to-play twinking, or you've been gone for a few years and you're kind of coming back, I want to summarize quickly what I think is important that you know going forward. Basically what happened was, at the end of Battle for Azeroth, Blizzard looked at everything and said, man, 120 levels is just way too many. We cannot make every level feel meaningful without having incredible amounts of skill and ability bloat. We want to avoid that. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 120 levels, we're going to have it, and you're going to, the level cap is going to be 60 from now on. At the same time, Blizzard also completely redesigned the starting experience for World of Warcraft, introduced Exile's Reach, which is a new starter leveling zone that kind of introduces you to the mechanics of the game a little bit better than the old starting zones did. Am I going to make this boat? I might. And they sort of completely redesigned that, and Exile's Reach spits you out at level 10. So when they were having the max level from 120 to 60, there was a lot of speculation, including from yours truly, that they were going to have the free to cap level. We were also going to be capped at level 10. Um, and they, you know, what came with this was a character squish. Was your character would get squished non-linearly, as sort of a sliding scale of levels based on where you were um, when the squish happened to where you ended up. So max level characters were 120 and got squished to 50, which isn't half, but level 20 characters ended up getting squished to level 10. So again, more speculation than it was going to be level 10, because surely they weren't going to give us a third of the game in levels for free. Well, turns out they did. The level cap for starter accounts is still level 20, while the max level cap of the game is level 60. A few other tweaks that they made means that we now have access to every expansion but the most current one. So we don't have access to Shadowlands, but we have access to every expansion but that. And with some rare exceptions, Cataclysm being an odd one, we have access to, I'd say, anywhere from 75% to 90% of an expansion's content. You can play World of Warcraft for free, and I would say get 85% of the game, like as it is, which is an incredible, incredible amount of content, and exponentially more than we used to. With all the zone scaling and quest scaling and stuff like that, there's 15 years of content for us to be able to go through and do, which is fantastic. If you are a free-to-play PvE fan, there is no better time, obviously, for obvious reasons, than right now to play a free-to-play account. It's incredible. Excuse me. So you can collect hundreds of pets. I think you can get over 100 mounts. Yes. Tabards, transmogs, achievement points, whatever it is you like to do in sort of a non-PvE fashion for free to play, you're going to be busy for a long time. It's an insane amount of goods. As far as PvP goes, actually, you know what? I'm going to pause. I don't know where this guy is that sells this cooking recipe. We're going to come back to the PvP. Just hang tight. Where do we think PvP is in terms of the bracket overall? And just as a warrior, it reminds me a lot, and very fondly of Wrath Kata era 39s, especially Wrath era. There are like hints of stance dancing. You want to swap to sword and board for some defensive moments and swap back to two-hander to hit people real hard. If you want it, you have disarm, you have interrupt, you have hamstring, you have real punchy damage. It feels a lot like I remember 39 Warrior feeling, which is very, very good. And a lot of the rest of the bracket feels a lot like 39s did when I played 39s. Like, for instance, Resto Druids, not the best healers in the bracket. Still probably the best FCs. But they have great utility. They can spec into the Thorns. Is it Resto gets the Thorns talent? I don't remember. I don't know enough about Druids. But they get Thorns. They get their good heals over time. Lots of utility built in there, which is sort of where Resto Druids were in 39s. And then you've got Holy Paladins are probably the strongest healers in the bracket. Do a lot of limited burst, but that burst is very, very big. Feels a lot like 39 Holy Paladins did, though I don't remember the Holy Paladins doing a whole lot of damage. They were just strong and stubborn. You've got Frost and Arcane Mages doing well. Hunters are, of course, Hunters, very strong. It just reminds me a lot of that sort of golden age era of 39s. And it might be, Chops' bad memory combined with a little bit of nostalgia, but it plays like I remember the 39s bracket playing back when I first got into twinking, which is a very good thing. The health of the bracket is not where the 39s used to be. When I started twinking and got into 39s, there were maybe 8 guilds that were running war games teams on any given week. In just the Nightfall battle group. That's cool, man, and that is not where 20s are right now. I can name 3 guilds that are more or less active in 20s. None of them are running war games. I think between the 3 of us, we might have a war games team with some subs. So the bracket participation from, I guess, what you would call not competitive twinks, because I know people who play casual games and like to try to make those casual games competitive. I don't want to say competitive twinks, but guys, organized games. Twinks who want organized games. Not a whole lot of them in the bracket. Which is unfortunate, but it's not impossible to grow from there. So I was trying to put my finger on why free-to-play twinking, even though this is sort of the height of free-to-play twinking, with all of the things that you can do and all the places you can go, the quests you can do, and the collections you can collect. And it's very fun and very, very inviting. It's a very easy time to get into free to play. It just doesn't feel as cool as free to play used to feel. And I have had this discussion with Odie and with Andre, and we've talked about it for hours to try to pin down exactly what it is that feels so different about it. And I think we eventually came up with the idea that you don't feel as small anymore, because you were level 20 in a game designed to go up to level 120. And so as a free-to-play, you felt very small in a very large world. Most of the game was not meant for you. And then, especially very early in free-to-play, back in sort of like MOP and Legion era free-to-play, MOP WOD and Legion, like, when it was still very new, and before they really introduced a whole lot of zone scaling, it felt very small to be a free-to-play. You had 3 or 4 zones on each continent that were made for you, and everything else was much higher level. And so if you went and did something, it really felt like you got one over on Blizzard. And it is just partly because you are level 20 in a world where the level cap is 60, you, by nature of that, just simply feel like you are farther along in progress than when you were level 20 in a world that capped out at level 120, where you felt like you were a much smaller part of the world. So it does take away some of that renegade aspect of free to plays. It's just not as counterculture. You know, it's not as cool to look at it and say, man, I've got 200 battle pets. So what, man? That is cool. It's neat that you can do that. It's not as having 200 battle pets on this character will not be as cool as having 100 battle pets on this character was like 2 expansions ago. That's just fact of the matter, man. Which is a little unfortunate. It does feel a little. It does feel a little less punk. But you know, hey, people said Blink-182 were sellouts, and you know, 25 years later, we're all sitting around wishing we still had Blink-182. Well, okay, not we all. I am, and so I guess there's something to be said for that. It is a lot of fun. I think that's a good example. That is actually a good example. Free to play has gone from a very punk rock thing to a very pop punk thing, and that's fine. I am a huge, unashamed fan of pop punk. Defend pop punk. It's awesome. It's not quite as cool as punk is, but it's also way more fun than punk is. And I think that analogy perfectly captures what's going on with free to play. Is that the current state of free to play is way more fun than it's ever been. It's not as cool, but it's way more fun. And now those of us who have been doing it for a while play the part of sort of the aging punk at the punk shows with our grandfathered gear, you know, our shirts from bands that no longer exist, our patches and stickers and buttons on our jackets from bands the younger kids have never heard of. But we still go to the pop punk shows. We see those kids having fun. It's a blast. We have the memories from those. That is the analogy that I have been reaching for. Is that is it? The punk analogy. Free to play now is pop punk, no longer punk rock. Nailed it. And with that, I'm gonna wrap it up. I got some good progress on these cooking recipes. I'm gonna go finish the rest of them off camera because I nailed it. I landed on the perfect. Awesome. Thanks for hanging out with me. I will see you guys next time.